Hi everyone, it's Tess from teachwithtess.com. You can find everything you need about teaching ESL online, working from home, and of course Wales English. Now today's video is all about, well, should you teach English online in 2021? Is it a viable option for you if you're already a teacher, let's say in a brick and mortar classroom, or you're wanting to come in to teach online? You're a young teacher or you have not taught before, but you think it's a great opportunity and you're interested. I want to just go through several things to give you the facts for you to make a decision, and I'm also going to share my insight in this. So let's go. First of all, why am I an online ESL teacher? Good question. I've been in education for over 20 years and I've worked as a qualified teacher in schools here in the UK. I ran my own ESL company in France. I've taught as I've worked as a contractor in independent schools, doing something completely different to teaching, but it's always been in education. So back in 2019, I rethought with my partner, we rethought our goals. What did we want to do? You know, our kids have pretty much flown the nest. We don't have the commitments we used to have. What does our future look like? And we want to travel. That's our thing. We want to travel. We want to see the world. And I want to be able to teach without borders. That was my key driver. Now, whatever the reason it is that you're interested in this, it is the most incredible opportunity for somebody who'd never worked at home. Oh, the joy. I have my garden here. Hello, garden. I have my kitchen here. Hello, kitchen. So I have my cup of tea. Very easy to make. There's just something really nice about working from home. And of course, COVID came along, so it was the best thing I ever did because I was working flat out throughout the pandemic. Lockdown, what's that? So, you know, for me, there were clear drivers behind the reason I wanted to work online. Now, why should you do it? Why do I still think it's absolutely valid, although there's been a big influx of teachers because of the amount of people who were either losing their work or just wanted to switch because of COVID. Now, these are my key reasons. These are the things I think you should think about. So, first of all, why is it a great thing? As I said, you can work from home. You can look after your kids. And for a lot of people, this is a real driver. Now, I know a lot of my American friends, because they can teach early, they homeschool too. So this really complements their homeschooling, or they go out to work, or they don't work, or they work on their own personal brand, but they are teaching before their kids get up. So it enables them to earn some extra income as well as being a mum. And that absolutely ticks a massive box. For me, and lots of the empty nesters, maybe travel's a thing, or just freedom to do other things and go to an office. You know, that is something I find invaluable. And if you're interested in ESL and have never done it before, go pick up my freebies. I'm going to put a link up there, and you can see what sort of things you need to start out. So that's a good question. So first, let's go through these points. If you want to start teaching online, what do you need? That's quite important to know. For many companies, a degree is necessary. For the better paid companies it is, but not all of them. So there are options if you don't have a degree, but if you do, great. Anyone who wants to teach online needs to have a 120-hour minimum TEFL, TESL or a CELTA, etc. That's really important. No way around that. Another thing a lot of companies look for is a great CV. So take a little bit of time and write a great CV. I have another video on that. It's very important to remember if you're applying to Chinese schools, for instance, the hiring teams tend to be Chinese native speakers. So tailor your CV with that in mind. Feel free to contact me. I can coach you with CVs, and I help people into Wales English all the time, the company I work for. So those sort of things are really important. Many schools ask for experience. Now, it does not have to necessarily be physical teaching experience. It could be as a homeschooling mum. It could be that you've worked in summer camps, things like that. But working with children for at least a year tends to be a fairly common requirement in the better paid schools. You can, of course, go independent. That takes a lot more work in the sense that you need to have your own curriculum, write your own lesson plans and all this sort of stuff, whereas many of the schools, they provide everything, so you just go teach and then it's finished. Now, so that's the one thing. Those are the basics of what you need. Actually, no, one more thing. Another thing you need to consider when you apply and look for schools is your nationality, because some schools look for certain nationalities. They won't recruit from everywhere, and many of them want native English speakers from those countries. So it can be a bit, some are more flexible than others. You just need to go do your research. Right, let's talk about number 2. What can you earn? Is it something viable? Is it something for you worth thinking about from that respect? Well, I would say, yep, it works for me. I live in the UK and I don't just teach. I think this is really important to say. There are other options apart from just teaching. So yes, you can earn a supplementary income just teaching. If you want to just sort of turbocharge it a bit, go off and look at those companies and see whether or not secondary positions are possible. For instance, I host webinars at Wales English for people who want to start recruiting for them. I recruit myself. I've done training work for Wales, and I've also made video content for them. These are what they call secondary positions, and they can really help supplement your income. So that's something to think about. For instance, I've made a video on my, why did I do that? I've made a video on my 2020 earnings. Go check it out because it's a fairly healthy amount. Now, the other thing you need to consider, obviously, for pay is the company you work for. Wales is one of the best paying companies out there. Others can pay less. Some you have to really think, is it worth it? But for many people, if it isn't your main source of income, it's great. You can just sort of do a little bit of teaching here and there and you can get extra income. It's a nice little side hustle for many people. Now let's consider, if you're a classroom teacher, brick and mortar teacher, and you want to move online, what are the key differences, you may ask yourself? It may terrify you. I know I've spoken to some brick and mortar teachers who've gone, oh, how do you do it? How can you teach online? And I must admit, having come from a classroom, teaching online is so different. But at the same time, you've got the fundamentals, which are the same, which is that you are teaching and you love your kids and you want to do the best by them and get them, and you want to help them to reach their full potential. Those things are always going to be the same. However, how you do it is what changes. So of course you need to know probably a little bit more about tech. It's quite important when you're teaching online to be at ease talking into a camera, as I'm doing now, because obviously everything you do is through this tiny little screen, and it can be really odd seeing your student is this big and you're in a little screen this big, and if you're coming from marching around a classroom into this tiny little square, it can be really weird, and you can think, how can I engage this student? How can I make them interested in what I'm saying, and are they listening to me, and all this stuff. You get used to it. A lot of it's down to energy. You need this thing called TPR, essential. TPR, go see my video on that. It is absolutely essential. And without it, it's a lot harder for the students to understand you. You have to think about the type of tools you can use. There are lots of different things online that you can use, as in a brick and mortar classroom. You can use an online classroom to make it more fun and exciting. Tons of stuff out there. Yes, and so the last big thing I would say between the physical classroom and the online platform is that in a classroom, even though there are lots of students there, it's, you can get them to do loads of pair work, and you can have a little bit of downtime depending on the age and ability you're teaching. It's not quite the same online. It's super important to have a lot of energy in your voice, not necessarily you jumping around all over the place, but your voice has to be full of energy, full of positivity, and you can't, yes, you have to give your students time to respond, but you're not going to have lots of white time as such. So that's really important. I think those are the key differences. So last of all, if you're serious about wanting to move online, and I do think it's a great option, I sincerely do, then you need to go on and do some research. Now, this is key. What is it that you're looking for in a school? Do you want to work for a school or do you want to have your own students? This is the first really big choice. It's very different. I mentioned it earlier. If you want to work for a school, then you have to really think about what you are looking for from it. What are your important must-haves? You know, a lot of it will be impacted by whether or not you got a degree or experience, etc., etc., etc. But do you want flexibility? Because there are some schools that are super flexible and others that really are not. Wales is not particularly flexible, but on the plus side of Wales is that it has these long 30-week blocks of lessons. You can have holidays, don't worry. But it means that for every week, pretty much, you know what you're going to be earning. So I teach 20 hours-ish a week because sometimes I do trials. I know exactly what I'm going to earn at the end of the month, plus my referring, plus secondary positions, but it's lovely to know. So there's a certain amount of consideration from that point of view. The other thing you need to think about very carefully is your time zone, because depending on where you live will impact how easy it is to do the hours at the school you're interested in is, if you see what I mean. So if you're living Pacific time, you're teaching very early in the morning. I teach during the day. In Asia, it's later. You know, the time zone really impacts it. So think very carefully about what it is that you want to do. But most of all, at the end of it, I really sincerely believe that for me, it has given me the wings to do what I want to do, which is for my partner Paul and myself to go. We're going to travel as soon as we can. We're looking at a house sit this afternoon, so hopefully it'll all go to plan. I wish you all the very best with this choice, and I would love to hear from you. If you need any help whatsoever, I can help you with an application with Wales English, because I recruit for them, of course, but I also offer coaching for anyone who wants to do ESL. Just get in touch. I'd love to hear from you. Thanks so much, and I'll see you next week.